Right, well, let's get to it, Philip. I have to say, I mean, it was an amazing piece of political theatre last night in the Rose Garden.
Donald Trump do something?
Basically, all news now is Donald Trump did something, isn't it? He said he was going to do it. He made the announcement. He called it Liberation Day. And the way he's selling this is a declaration of economic independence. He talked about how for decades our country has been looted, pillaged, raped and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. And basically, it's payback time. Mm-hmm. These are tariffs. I mean, some of the countries are facing, very, very high tariffs indeed. I mean, very, very high tariffs indeed. 49% on some nations. We got hit with 10%. That's the lowest of the low. Do you think, first of all, that Americans, the American economy, American workers, American consumers, first of all, before we come back to Britain, will benefit from what Donald Trump did? Because he had various manufacturing workers from some of those key swing states, industrial states, and they were really, really pleased with what was being announced. Do you think this will actually benefit those people long run?
I think you'll be able to use the numbers to persuade them that they are, but the reality is they're going to be paying more. America is not economically inwardly focused. It hasn't been since 1930s. It relies on global trade, and therefore either Americans are going to have to do away with a lot of the consumer goods that they enjoy at cheap prices coming from the online Chinese sites or other places, and go to more expensive domestically produced goods. But again, US manufacturing is going to have to ramp up to be able to fill all of that gap, and that takes time. That takes
because there's the argument, isn't it? Buy British if you're in Britain, buy American, support your local industry. Don't complain about jobs being lost if you're busy buying something cheap on Amazon from China.
Yeah, but nothing is purely one particular country. Apple is an American company, but the majority of the components are coming from Taiwan, from China, in your iPhones and your computers and
even
America.
I think I found amazing. I mean, unless you are an expert on the automotive industry, when you already know this, that even American brand cars made in America, so this is an American brand made in America, even they will have had goods which have gone in and out of Mexico and or Canada for 3 or 4, 10 times even, various different components. So that's, I must point out, it's 10% tariffs on the UK and again on most of the world on these on exports to the US, but it's 25% on steel and aluminium or aluminum. I think we should just say no. This doesn't apply because we sell you aluminum.
We sell you aluminium, not aluminum.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to put this point to Seb Gawker a little bit later, advisor to the president. But and also on the car industry. Now, we have 800,000 jobs in the car industry here in the UK. A lot of those are sort of luxury goods that do have big exports to. I think 70% of our cars are exported to America. So that is and those are luxury cars, the Jags, the Bentleys, the Rolls Royces, and things.
And US taxpayers going to get hit. Again, take defence as an example. The F-35 jet that everyone goes on about, 10% of that's manufactured in the UK. So there's going to be a 10% tariff put on it and coming to the United States. And then your components are coming from elsewhere.
So it's not that simple. I mean, and one of the reasons why I was worried and most worried about this is because when he put up this board, it was sort of like a Eurovision, America, I mean, Australia's in Eurovision, so why not America? Yeah. And it was sort of, Norvège, nul point. In fact, Norway had the standard tariffs, but 20%. But it's 10%. Same as us, but it was, some of these numbers were, I mean, economists were going, these are plucked from thin air, and it turns out these are back of a fag packet ideas. We were told it's based on the economic tariff that is charged by those countries, plus other barriers to trade. And the EU did that to us. A load of paperwork, a load of stuff that makes it really hard. Particular standards on certain things. So okay, we don't let in chlorinated chicken. Well, there you are. That's a barrier to trade. That sort of thing. But actually, those numbers still don't add up either. What it appears to have been is that it's based on the balance of trade. So the reason we got a 10% tariff, not a 20% tariff like the EU, isn't because Keir Starmer is an amazing negotiator and charming, and we've got Trump has an invitation from the King to come and stay later this year. It's not because of that at all. Because we've got the same rate as loads of other countries that are very protectionist. It's because we don't have a trade surplus with America because we don't sell enough to them. We're basically in a balance of trade.
I think you're...
So it's actually a failure of ours that we've got the 10% tariff, weirdly.
Yeah, but the whole thing's extremely complex, and I think you hit the nail on the head at the beginning when you said Donald Trump's thrown a hand grenade into the global economics, and
he likes to be the disruptor.
He does, but what he needs to understand is if the American people are going to win out of this, he needs to understand the second, third, and fourth order implications. And whenever you get a set of tariffs put up, and we had a chat about this beforehand, the one that made me smile was the tariff on the herd and McDonnell Islands. Because of course you know where they are.
Oh, of course. We did the Chagos. So just before we get genuine, he held us. People who weren't watching it, he held up this board, but there were actually a number of other boards. There's a whole list of all the. It's pretty much every country.
Yes.
Tell us about these islands, because there is a 10% tariff on these.
Oh, there's 10% tariff on these islands, and they are between Antarctica and Grande Terre. Of course, everyone knows where Grande Terre is.
Help us.
Southern Indian Ocean, bordering the.
But they're basically an Australian
Antarctic
territory.
They're sitting there, and they have no people. So we're waiting for formal comment from the head of the penguin colony, which there is on the islands. Or
one of the two active volcanoes on the islands.
Or one of the two active volcanoes.
So this is the thing. There's an element of I'm not sure you're paying attention. This is the worry, isn't it? Now, when we've got a whole load of people, got a raft of economists saying, all the world's leading economists say this, and this. Well, and they said a lot about Brexit too. Yeah. I'm sorry, they said a lot about a lot of things that haven't turned out to be very accurate. They're also the people who got a lot of them got us into the mess where we got the economic crash in 2008, and also the mad policies of lockdown, which let's just print a load of money and see how it goes. So I'm not entirely sure I'm going to trust quote the experts unquote on this, but I also don't trust. I'm sorry, I'm not MAGA. I don't trust Donald Trump on this either. He thinks that VAT, which is a sales tax, is a tariff. It clearly is not. It's a tariff is something that's it's imposed on imports. It's imposed on all goods other than kids' shoes and food. So it's clearly not a tariff. So when you've got someone who has that little understanding and someone who thinks that we can put tariffs on a penguin colony, you've got a bit of a problem. People not paying attention to detail. Now this is the thing. There are a lot of people in governments around the world, particularly the countries like China, where they damn well do pay attention to the detail. The big worry for me is, while I see a very good argument for imposing tariffs on China, both as a hostile nation, as a nation that repeatedly steals the technology and the intellectual property of America and European companies, which and then makes economic benefit from it. They use slave labour. They massively subsidise a lot of the industry. We're busy, economically committing suicide with our net zero policies, while they're using coal-fired factories to make things. Entirely up to them, as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, we can't compete on that basis. So there is an argument that it's not a level playing field on that basis. I think there's an argument there. There's also an argument, is there not, for tariffs to protect key vital industries involving defence, involved in things like steel manufacturing. I would say agriculture as well. I mean, British farmers are still reeling from the Australian free trade deal, which massively hit them with imports from Australia. So I think that there is an argument for limited tariffs, which most countries do accept. There are very few 100% free trading nations. Limited tariffs to protect key products, Scotch whisky, or vital necessities like agriculture and like some steel production and things like that. That makes sense to me. Across the board, though, the worry here is an escalation of prices for consumers, because it's going to put prices up for American consumers. If we retaliated, it will put prices up for us. If the EU, as it looks like, retaliates, we will have no doubt see prices generally going up anyway. If there is an escalating global tariff war, that is bad for the world economy, and if it's bad for the world economy, it's bad for us, isn't it? Oh,
hugely bad. And this is where we wait with bated breath to see how other countries are going to react, and how power blocks like the EU is going to react. If they start to impose tariffs back on the United States again, and we get into this global economic war that is just going to destabilise the global economy even more, and we're all going to pay for it. You know, I think what Donald Trump did last night has probably wiped out Rachel Reeves' headroom that she created, and a lot more. We are going to see job losses on it, and that's just on the 10% tariffs. If this trade war starts around the world, or even if it starts with one or two big countries like China and China is going to respond hard, then the economic shock, we're going to feel it for months and months and months.
There are countries and periods where there has been trade tariffs, protectionist policies. America in the 19th century, people pointing out to me, Taiwan and Japan, they grew rapidly from economic devastation to being global leaders by protectionist policies in certain of their industries for a period of time. But in terms of developed economies, there is no developed economy with strongly protectionist policies which does well because of that. That said, I completely understand people's concerns about, great, we've got loads of cheap goods. Let's just flood our country in America, flood our country with cheap goods. That's great. We just buy everything online. Again, you want it cheap and you want it delivered for free by Amazon. Lovely, jubbly. Yeah, well, when you do that, you're allowing Amazon, a massive company that has all those benefits of power where they basically push down the prices and take huge profits from people who are selling on there. But people just go, well, it's the cheapest, it's the easiest. So other companies in this country do go under. Those businesses don't start. Those businesses go under. They simply cannot compete. They cannot grow because you cannot compete with that scale. When you do that, that is almost, that's the equivalent of saying, yeah, let's just bring in loads of cheap goods. We can't compete with slave Uyghur labour. We can't compete with countries which are not basically tying their hands behind their back with mad net zero policies, pushing up the cost of energy for every industry. We have 4 times the energy price for industry here than America does. So we can't compete with America on that front. I mean, and that's the thing. I can really understand why people are very sympathetic to this and just say, look, at least Donald Trump is doing something for the American people and American industry. If it did bring factories, it did bring manufacturing, it did bring jobs back to America. The big question is, will it actually do that? With uncertainty, people are not going to go, I'm just going to go build a multi-million-pound car factory in Minnesota, because they don't know what the tariff policy is going to be, not in 4 years' time, but in 4 hours' time.
Well, and again, the economic shock will stop companies want to invest. Look at Nike. Nike, big headquarters in just outside Hilversum in Netherlands, but it's an American company with its main headquarters there. It does most of its manufacturing in Vietnam. Vietnam's been hit with huge tariffs. Its stock price went through the floor overnight after this because of its global footprint. Nike is not going to therefore have the money to invest in building those factories that it's exploiting the cheap labour in Vietnam in the United States, where it's going to be more expensive to build the factories, greater union control over the workforce. It's going to cost them more to get the output. Their goods are expensive anyway at the moment.
Well, a lot of that is profit.
Well,
because they make them so cheap.
A lot of that is profit, but then they reinvest that profit back into expanding the country, creating more jobs, and profit isn't always bad.
I don't think a profit is bad. I'm just saying, whether you're running a sweatshop making the cheapest goods in fast fashion, or whether you're running a sweatshop to make the most expensive designer goods, the people working in Bangladesh and all these other countries, they're paid the same rate.
Exactly, and it will always take them years to set that up. So, the economic shocks now, and they're not going to see the benefit, if there is any benefit, for a long time.
The EU have been speaking. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, she says this is a major blow to the world economy. If you had to make a prediction whether we do better or worse as a result of this overall in a couple of years down the line, what would you reckon?
Well, on the figures as at today, at this moment, and I'll time date it at 10:20, we're going to do a lot worse, because Donald Trump might change his mind tomorrow.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? The uncertainty. And yet, a lot of people would argue that Donald Trump's unpredictability is part of his power. The main thing is that in terms of retaliation, I don't think we should. We're not going to win a trade war with the United States. That's not an option. We are David, they are Goliath. Just try going for that free trade deal. But again, farmers will be very worried about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think this is like a lot of things. I think this is a much more nuanced conversation. People going, let's make America great again. And why don't we have a government that does exactly the same here? Yeah, that's the way to do it. Again, American power and British power, very different in those different scenarios. But equally, I don't think the world is coming to an end because of these tariffs. I think there may be I'm not sure, some method in the madness. There may be a bit of 4D chess going on. I don't know. There may be a plan. Who knows? Things often work out. Countries will react perhaps differently for how many is expected.